Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. We talked recently on the show about the Houston man who shot his neighbor while videotaping and while on the phone with a 911 operator. He claimed he was standing his ground. He stated that several times during the video. Let's take a look at that video now.
Y'all just need to keep it down.
No, we ain't got to keep down.
Yeah, you do. Keep it down.
What you need to do is get your ass away from here.
You need to keep it down.
Piss me off.
You need to keep it down.
See, because when I go in that house and I come back, don't think I won't be equal to you, baby.
Well, if you don't...
Right, you want to flash your goddamn gun?
Joining me now to discuss this are Lad Everitt, Director of Communications at the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. Let me go first to Lad Everitt. Lad, the case being made is that this individual was within his rights to stand his ground according to Texas law. The fact that he was filming and the fact that he was on the phone with 911 are just part of the evidence that he believes confirms that. What's your reaction to the video that you've seen and to the argument being made?
Yeah, I was very disturbed watching the video. You know, one thing that the Texas self-defense law does not allow you to do is to provoke a conflict and then resolve it with deadly force. And I think what the video clearly shows in this instance is that this is an individual who was wandering outside with a loaded gun. I mean, this was a mundane dispute over loud music at a neighbor's party. And I think the video shows clearly that he was looking for a pretext under which to use deadly force. And the video to me is deeply disturbing, and I think the jury in Texas has gotten it right.
Okay, Larry, let me get your thoughts on that. I mean, where is the line when we look at stand your ground laws? How far can someone go in terms of the lead up to what eventually gets to a deadly shooting and still fall under a so-called stand your ground, I was simply not retreating type of defense?
Well, I think you have to be standing your ground. The assumption is that you are under attack, that the violence was initiated, or the threat of violence was initiated by the person that and you end up shooting. And on this one, I happen to agree with Lad. This fellow apparently has an anger management problem. He should have called the cops and waited for the cops. There was no tremendous urgency. He was just riled up, and that's not something that should happen.
Okay, Lad, to go back to you, give us a sense of how you see this situation comparing to the Trayvon Martin case, which now we have seen charges in. We have now seen video reenactment of George Zimmerman describing what he claims took place on the night of that shooting. Do you see these two cases as analogous legally, or do you see a significant difference between the two cases?
Well, I think the first important thing to note is that the stand your ground law is written a little bit differently in the two states. In Texas, the law clearly states that you cannot provoke a conflict and be protected under stand your ground. In Florida, it's a little bit different. In Florida, you can provoke a conflict and be protected under the law, but the law would then restate the duty to retreat from a confrontation. So, you know, that's why undoubtedly Zimmerman is emphasizing his claim that he was pinned down and unable to escape from Trayvon. But I think the similarity, there is a striking similarity here in that Raul Rodriguez and George Zimmerman were two armed individuals that basically went out looking for trouble. You know, Raul Rodriguez had no business wandering over to the neighbor's party with a loaded handgun and brandishing that at people and provoking them. And by the same point, Zimmerman had no business whatsoever driving around in his SUV and profiling this young black teenager and basically deciding to take the law in his own hands and get out of his car when he was advised against that, to follow this kid and to engage in this confrontation with him. He had no business whatsoever doing it.
Larry, let me give you an opportunity to respond to that. Do you agree with Lad about the striking similarities? Do you believe the Trayvon situation was different, and do you disagree with Lad?
I disagree. I don't think there's any evidence that Zimmerman was profiling, nor is it likely that he was profiling. The man is half Hispanic. He's bilingual. Mother is from Peru. Grandfather is African Peruvian. So there's nothing at all in Zimmerman's background to indicate that he's a racist. According to what Zimmerman says, and apparently some of the witnesses corroborate this, Martin was behaving in a suspicious fashion. He got out to ask if he could help him. Again, according to Zimmerman, Martin ran away between some rows of townhouses, and Zimmerman lost him and was on his way back to his truck. And that was seen by a couple of witnesses, that as he's approaching his truck, Martin comes up and slugs him and puts him on the ground and bangs his head. So he's got the physical evidence of the gashes on the back of his head and the witness's corroboration that this took place. At that point, I think stand your ground isn't really even at issue. If you're really on the ground with a guy pounding the brains out of you, then it's a matter of self-defense, pure and simple.
That's interesting, Lad. So Larry's actually going further and saying this isn't even really a stand your ground issue. It's simply self-defense, given the allegation that Zimmerman is making about what took place and what Trayvon Martin did. I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with that. I mean, look, the key issue here is that the stand your ground law removes one's duty to retreat from a confrontation in public. And I think the key issue in the Zimmerman case, and the reason why he wasn't arrested on the spot that night, is because he had no duty to retreat. And it was obvious, I think, to anyone that when he was on that 911 call, and the police knew this themselves, he had every opportunity to simply drive away. In fact, they told him point blank, "We do not need you to engage this young man. We will handle the problem." At that point, we all know that Zimmerman could have simply driven away, went home, or gone to that prearranged meeting place. So that is the key element here, and that's really what bothers us so much about this law, this notion that even when you can safely walk away from a conflict, this law is going to allow you to stand in and kill another human being, and we just think that's immoral.
Well, Zimmerman and a couple of witnesses say that he was on his way back to the truck. Initially, he had pursued. He had tried to find out what Martin was doing, and when the cops said, "We think you ought to go back to your truck," that's what he did. So I don't see how you can take any exception to what Zimmerman was doing.
Well, let me jump in there and I'll give you a chance to respond, Lad. I think that the real question that I have is, if he was going back to his truck, how did he end up between rows of townhouses where there is no driveway, there aren't vehicles? That's my question, just logistically, with what I see when I look at the location of the incident. Lad, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I'm not sure what Larry is referring to. We've read all the released documentation from the police files, and I don't know of any witness that pegged this confrontation near Zimmerman's truck. As you noted, David, it was a confrontation that took place, and they found Trayvon dead between two rows of townhouses on a grassy area, not on concrete, not near Zimmerman's truck, etc. So, you know, there is some conflicting testimony between, you know, who screamed, who was on top during the conflict, whether actual punches were thrown. There's a lot of differing testimony in that area. But again, the key element to me here is that this is a guy who went looking for trouble, who got out of his vehicle to engage a kid that had done nothing, a kid who had gone to a corner store for snacks. And that's why we have a precious loss of life here.
Well, not that Zimmerman knew it at the time, but this was a juvenile delinquent who'd had a lot of trouble with the law and, in fact, had been suspended from school. And that's why he was where he was at that time. And it's hard to understand how Zimmerman got the gashes that we saw in the pictures on the back of his head if there wasn't some concrete around to bang his head on.
Lad, do you think that this argument that's being made, that because of Trayvon Martin's history of what may have been getting into trouble in school, is that relevant to deciding whether he rightfully was shot that night?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you know, being suspended from school doesn't warrant execution. I mean, let's get real here. I mean, Larry's group and other groups will be the first to defend individual rights when it involves guns. But here's a kid who's out one night just getting snacks at the halftime of a basketball game and is basically hunted and killed. So I find it ironic and somewhat sad that all of a sudden this kid has no rights. This kid has no right to pursue life, liberty, etc. So, I mean, no, there's nothing that this kid did that merited being shot and killed.
Well, since we now know that he was a juvenile delinquent, it's entirely consistent with Zimmerman and the witness's account that he attacked Zimmerman. And so I think, therefore, we going to have to wait till the jury sorts this out and decides which witnesses and which testimony they accept as being dispositive. But certainly, I don't think we should assume that Zimmerman did something in violation of law. He very well may have been protecting his life.
Okay, we're certainly not going to resolve that tonight, but absolutely we will keep an eye on the trial. And I appreciate both of you being on. Ladd Everitt, Director of Communications from the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and Larry Pratt, Executive Director from Gun Owners of America. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.